Hi, ArcFieldWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Wednesday morning, July the 23rd. A few topics I'd like to cover this morning, including a look at the tropical situation and take a look at the temperature pattern in the Arctic region over the last several months here. In terms of the Mid-Atlantic region, it looks like heat and humidity will tend to build up in that Thursday, Friday, Saturday time frame, likely peaking in terms of temperatures on Friday afternoon in the DC, Philadelphia, New York City corridor, maybe all the way up into the mid to upper 90s. I think that intense heat will really be focused on the day Friday. Stays very warm and humid over the upcoming weekend, but not quite the intense heat that we'll likely see in the I-95 corridor region on Friday. There certainly will be the return of a threat of showers and thunderstorms in the Mid-Atlantic region on Friday night, and that threat will continue on each of the upcoming weekend days. Let's take a look at the latest ACE numbers here across the tropical regions. ACE stands for Accumulated Cyclone Energy. It's probably the best way to determine overall tropical activity. It takes into consideration not only the magnitude or the strength of a storm, but its longevity as well. So I like to look at the ACE as a good measure of what's been going on in the tropics. This particular table comes from Colorado State University, and it shows the ACE all the way up to today. This is the current ACE tally across the northern hemisphere. It's broken down by region. We first have the Atlantic basin at the top here, and this far right column is really what I'd like to focus in on, with the current ACE shown here. In this case, for the Atlantic basin, it's at 1.5, and the normal for this time of the summer season in parentheses. So you can see the Atlantic far below normal right now. It is, of course, still early in the Atlantic basin tropical season, which tends to ramp up in August, peak in the middle of September, and then ramp down in October. So this certainly can change, but certainly off to a quiet start in the Atlantic basin. There is a weak tropical system down in the Gulf region. We'll have to keep our eyes on it. A small chance that it intensifies into a named tropical system. An increasing chance, I think, will take place during the first couple of weeks of August, when that Madden-Julian oscillation kind of moves to a more favorable position for activity to develop in the Atlantic basin. We talked about that in yesterday's video discussion. Now, the all-important Pacific Ocean. It's so big, it's kind of split into two here. We have the Eastern Pacific and the Western Pacific, both below normal. You can see the Eastern Pacific 24 versus the normal of 34.9, and the Western Pacific Ocean it is about a third of what it should be this time of the year, with only an ACE of 21.1 versus a normal 64.4. So for the northern hemisphere as a whole, and this also includes the Indian Ocean, which has been extremely quiet so far, we're way, way below normal at this particular stage. Again, it's still relatively early. Things can change dramatically, but for right now, the tropical activity all across the northern hemisphere below normal for this stage of the season. Now let's go to the Arctic right here. I often post about the resiliency of the Arctic sea ice over the last 10 to 15 years or so. It's well below normal, however. It's stayed pretty much in a narrow zone in kind of a sideways trend over the last decade, or up to 12 or 15 years or so. And one of the key factors I take a look at are the temperature pattern in the Arctic region. That's what we're looking at here, going through all the months of this particular year, 2025. It's been a very, very persistent pattern for at least the last couple of decades, that while the cold season features above normal temperatures in the Arctic, the summer season is often right at normal or even a little bit below normal. And normal in the Arctic region is shown here, right here, in the blue line here. These are the normal temperatures in the Arctic region. This is the June, July, August period right here, and the actual observations are shown in this little jagged line here. And again, in the summer season, right around normal, which happens to be right around the freezing mark, and this has been a very persistent pattern in the Arctic over the last couple of decades. As long as temperatures remain nearly normal, which is around the freezing mark in the summer melting season, then Arctic sea ice is certainly not going to go completely away here. And this, again, has been the overwhelming pattern here that we have seen all the way back to the beginning of the century. Again, with the above normal temperatures in the cold season months of January, February, and March, and again later in the year tends to be above normal. But in that all-important summer season, the melting season, it has been around normal. And to me, that indicates water vapor is playing a very, very important role, because water vapor has a much bigger impact on temperatures when it's cold and dry, as opposed to when it's a little bit warm and more humid, as it typically is in the summer season. So this kind of a pattern with these above normal temperatures in the cold season suggests to me that water vapor is playing the big role. Again, we're going through another summer here with nearly normal or even slightly below normal temperatures in that Arctic region. You can go to the arcfieldweather.com homepage, click on the climate info, and scroll down, and you'll see my last posting on this, and where I really focus in on this particular pattern as it relates to the Arctic sea ice. Well, let's get back to the continental U.S. We looked at the tropical situation, then the temperature pattern across the Arctic region. Let's get back to the continental U.S. Interesting weather here going forward here. First of all, kind of looking ahead, looks like the pattern may actually turn pretty cool across parts of the nation, much of the nation, as we flip the calendar into the early part of August. More on that in a moment or so. We have heat and humidity about to make a return to the Middle Atlantic region after a couple of nice days with low humidity. But this heat coming up here, focused on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, will really be intense only on one day, I believe, in that D.C., Philadelphia, New York City corridor. And that day will be Friday, when temperatures can reach maybe even the upper 90s in those big cities along the I-95 corridor region. Very warm on Thursday, very warm on Saturday, but not the intense heat that I expect to see on Friday. Upper level ridging now centered over the Great Lakes region, with an upper level trough out across the interior western states. You can see an upper level low sitting right off of California as we begin the day here on Wednesday. Now let's move forward here, and we'll see this ridge kind of slide to the east for a while here, and it's kind of parked over the northeastern part of the nation by the end of the week. And here we are on Friday right here, kind of centered across the eastern states. Again, this will be the heat peak on Friday afternoon in places like D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, mid to upper 90s on the table for afternoon highs. Then things to begin to change a little bit as the ridge kind of makes a little bit of a movement. It begins to move by the weekend, spreads out to the west, and that is the overwhelming pattern here, that the upper level ridge, which will be focused, centered over the eastern states at the end of this week, let's say Friday timetable, by the early part of next week, kind of shifts westward, what we call retrogrades, out into the Mississippi Valley region, and the hottest weather by early next week out across the central part of the nation down through the deep south here. We'll continue to move forward here, and we have this pattern all the way to next Tuesday, and then into next Wednesday. You can see again the center of the ridge by next Wednesday out over the middle part of the nation here, the northwest flow aloft across the Great Lakes and into the northeastern part of the nation. By the way, this kind of a pattern will usually yields hot weather out across the southern central states here, the south central states, the lower Mississippi Valley region, with that upper level ridge parked overhead. And in that northwesterly flow, this is the kind of a pattern where we typically see mesoscale convective complexes. These are these large complex of thunderstorms that can move from northwest to southeast in a northwesterly flow regime, as we'll set up next week. So watch for that. It's way too early to pinpoint the days that this could occur, but we'll watch for complexes of thunderstorms that may first form over the Great Lakes and then slide to the south and east, potentially producing some wild weather, some wild severe weather in the northeastern quadrant of the nation. We'll go out a little bit farther in time, and by the time we get to the end of next week, and next Thursday is the last day of July, into the early part of August, there certainly are some signs that a deep upper level trough will form over southeastern Canada, and it could have an influence all the way down in the mid-Atlantic region, maybe even farther down the coast here. Temperatures could be normal, maybe even below normal, as we begin the month of August, with the highest pressure relative to normal, highest heights relative to normal at the beginning of August, which is next Friday, parked over the south central part of Canada. Now let's walk through the 850 millibar temperature anomaly pattern here. This is all using, by the way, the GFS run from last night at 0Z. All these particular maps from tropicaltidbits.com. Still hanging on to some pleasant air over the northeastern part of the nation. Today's kind of the transition day. The heat and humidity really return on Thursday in the northeastern states, then peaks on Friday with, again, high temperatures as high as the upper 90s in places like D.C., as an example, on Friday afternoon. Warmer than normal out across the Great Lakes as we begin the day here on Wednesday. A lot of cooler than normal air out across the interior Northwest and the western U.S., especially off of California. We've had this pattern for several months now where we have colder than normal air masses moving in from the eastern Pacific Ocean into California, into the western U.S. That'll be very interesting if that continues as we go into the fall and ultimately into the upcoming winter season. Now, let's move forward in time here. Again, that heat and humidity spreads back to the east here by the time we get to tomorrow afternoon, but especially on Friday. It'll be intense heat on Friday, at least for the one day, right here, D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, Boston. Again, way up in the 90s on Friday afternoon. And then we'll start to see a cold frontal system slide south and east, first across southeastern Canada, then into the northeastern states. This is, we're talking the Friday night, Saturday time frame, and that front, as has been kind of the typical pattern of late, will stall out as it reaches, let's say, that Pennsylvania, Maryland border region, that area. That spells some trouble for the upcoming weekend in the Mid-Atlantic region in terms of shower, thunderstorm threat from time to time. We'll move forward here in time well above normal conditions out across the northern plains, still colder than normal in California as we begin the upcoming weekend. And then we move into the latter part of the weekend, into the early part of next week. Kind of a mixed bag here. It's still cooler than normal out across California and the western coast region. Montana stays below normal, but well above normal temperatures out across the central and northern plains. Again, at this time, that high pressure ridge in the upper part of the atmosphere is parked right over the central lower Mississippi Valley region right here, so it's no surprise that very warm conditions, hot conditions out across the central and northern plains. This is early next week. Then we go into the middle part of next week. Here we are on Wednesday. Look at this across Canada. And we also talked about this at the in the video discussion yesterday, where I always like to look at what's going on across Hudson Bay, Greenland, as we start to move towards the fall season and into the upcoming winter season, and certainly some below normal temperatures up across that part of North America, kind of hastening the cool down of the water temperatures here. Something I certainly like to look at. The sooner the Hudson Bay in Canada freezes, that increases the chance that cold air masses dropping south from northern Canada towards the central and eastern U.S. will not be modified quite as much as if they would be if the water was not frozen. So this is something I'd like to take a look at. So it's very impressive to see way below normal temperatures here. Again, we're talking a week from right now. Now let's move forward here in time towards the end of next week. We'll look at all this colder than normal air here. We talked about that upper level trough could form over the southeastern part of Canada and have an influence all the way down in the mid-Atlantic region, maybe even farther south and west than the mid-Atlantic region. As we flip into the month of August, here we are next Friday, August 1st. Boy, take a look at that. That would be really spectacular weather for this time of the year if we can get this kind of below normal conditions. And there's reasons to believe that this could take place. For example, some of these teleconnection indices that we often talk about here at artfieldweather.com, one called the PNA, Pacific North America pattern, moves from negative or neutral all the way into positive territory right about this time as we turn into the early part of August. That tends to favor ridging out along the west coast and a northwest flow bringing cooler than normal air into the northeastern states. And this is something we'll certainly continue to monitor, this possibility here over the next several days. Well, let's wrap up with the surface forecast maps from last night's 0Z run of the GFS. Still dry weather hanging on here across most of the northeastern states. Now, as was the case on Tuesday, there is kind of a boundary zone that sets up right along the New Jersey coastline associated with that sea breeze. And that same boundary zone can develop today, causing some isolated afternoon showers along the Jersey coastline. So while the general pattern is for dry and warm conditions throughout the northeastern states, don't be shocked if, as was the case on Tuesday, there are some isolated showers right along the Jersey coastline, maybe even extending down into portions of Delaware as well. Now let's move forward here in time here this afternoon. And a key player here is this high pressure area that originated in Canada is now shifting off the northeastern seaboard, opening the door for that heat and humidity to make a return Thursday, Friday, and Saturday in the mid-Atlantic region. The typical flow around high pressure is clockwise, and that would produce a southwesterly flow of air on the backside of this high by the time we get into the day on Thursday for the eastern states here. Then we move into Friday, and here we go. On Friday morning, we'll have probably the hottest weather of this upcoming heat spell here in the mid-Atlantic region. Again, high temperatures Friday afternoon could peak out in the upper 90s in Washington, D.C., maybe mid to upper 90s, Philly, New York City. Then there'll be this cold frontal system that will slowly drop from the north and west into the northeastern states here. And here we are on Friday night. That will increase the chance for showers and thunderstorms, mid-Atlantic, northeast U.S. By the time we get to Friday night, that front then just kind of stalls out right in this area right here for the upcoming weekend, and that could result in shower and thunderstorms from time to time on Saturday and Sunday. And here we are into the latter part of the day on Sunday. Unsettled weather pattern, again, returning Friday night, lasting right through the upcoming weekend in the Mid-Atlantic region. Meanwhile, very, very hot conditions out across the Central Plains. You can see this flow of air is from the southwest to the northeast. That upper level ridge is parked right over this area by the time we get to the early part of next week. Hot weather out there, and that hot weather will extend all the way across the deep south as well. Then we talked about the possibility in this kind of a pattern with that northwesterly flow aloft of these mesoscale convective complexes, maybe even a derecho, which is just a long-lasting line of thunderstorms. Here is one possibility for that. Early next week, Monday time frame, over the Great Lakes, and it would drop to the south and east into the Ohio Valley, into the Mid-Atlantic region. Something, again, too early right now to pinpoint the timing of such a possibility, but this kind of a northwesterly flow aloft does produce these mesoscale convective complexes once in a while. So we'll have to watch for that over the next several days. Then we move forward in time here, and remember we talked about the possibility of cooler air moving into the eastern part of Canada and ultimately into the northeastern states by the early part of the month of August, which begins next Friday. This is a week from right now, next Wednesday, And this is a Canadian high pressure in control here with some beautiful air for this time of the year across the Great Lakes and slowly moving to the south Andes. Here we go. By Thursday, you have a strong cold front. And this is kind of far out there. This is a week from tomorrow, next Thursday. That strong cold front could move on through, and that Canadian high pressure will move over the Great Lakes, and the possibility of some very, very nice temperatures throughout much of the northeastern quadrant of the nation as we begin the month of August next Friday, August the 1st. By the way, at this same time, you have a tropical wave showing up here, and that is certainly on the table. When you see that high pressure region build over the southeastern part of Canada this time of the year, oftentimes you can get that undercutting tropical system moving from the east to the west. And this is also the time where we talked about that MJO moving into a more favorable position for Atlantic Basin tropical activity to start to ramp up. So look for that during the first couple of weeks of August. That's it for now. For ArcFieldWeather.com, this has been Meteorologist Paul Dorian.